Jadi yang tadi saya baru jelaskan itu yang dinamakan DCI. Jadi bagaimana kita memecah bisnis proses dari dalam model ke dalam roles dan konteks. Jadi memang kalau yang sudah berpengalaman mungkin ya menggunakan Ruby, ada hal yang nggak tepat di kode tadi. Di konteks ini itu ada memanggil extend ya. Extend ini kalau dipanggil di dalam runtime itu ada performance problem karena dia harus ibaratnya ya kalau di dalam Rails itu dia kayak ada banyak proses yang harus dilakukan supaya user ini jadi bisa mengambil metode yang ada di dalam customer tadi. Ini performance. Kalau kita menggunakan Rails MVC biasa kita nggak akan kena performance ini gitu. Jadi memang kode-kode yang tadi saya berikan itu bukan metode official, tapi memang tidak ada juga metode official di dalam penggunaan DCI di dalam Rails itu tadi. Dan yang menariknya juga DHH si kreatornya Rails itu juga sepertinya agak anti sama DCI. Tapi memang kalau yang mungkin kalau sudah kenal sama temperamen DHH ini ya, memang orang ini sangat vokal gitu dia memang seperti itu. Jadi waktu itu saya baca artikelnya memang dia nggak suka di CI karena setiap controller itu harus di refactor dan dimasukkan ke dalam konteks. Menurut dia itu gila gitu. Dan tapi memang ada komen yang menarik di paling bawah ini. Sebenarnya DCI nggak bilang semua kode kita yang sekarang ada harus di refactor. Sebenarnya kode yang sekarang ada itu cari yang kompleks dan itu yang di refactor. Kalau nggak kompleks kayak cuman CRUD, create, update, delete aja, sepertinya nggak perlu di refactor seperti ini gitu yang saya pernah baca. Dan ini juga tulisannya DHH di blognya dia nggak suka bahwa di CI itu ada runtime mixing tadi yang extend di dalam kode itu, dan model katanya harus dibuang dari logic, dia nggak setuju dengan itu kalau menurut DHH tadi ya. Cuman ini food for thought saja sih buat saya, jadi kita lihat aja ini perkembangannya gimana gitu untuk yang DCI ini. Ya, jadi memang kalau menurut saya harapan ke depan itu saya memikirkan suatu saat di mana kode bisnis proses itu terpisah dari model, dan walaupun tetap dipasang di kode ya, kan biasanya sekarang orang ngomong dipisah dari model, tapi sekarang kan bisnis proses sudah bisa dibaca di integration test gitu. Menurut saya nggak suka sih dipisah gitu bacanya, jadi kan bacanya harus integrationnya kayak gimana, make sense dari modelnya kayak gimana. Kan enaknya kalau misalnya semua bisnis proses itu ada dalam model. Mungkin gitu ya perkenalan DCI dari saya. Jadi conclusion setelah saya explore DCI selama beberapa lama ini, Ruby dan Rails itu masih butuh waktu sepertinya ya. Dan nggak tahu kalau misalnya developer core-nya seperti DHH ternyata nggak suka dengan DCI, mungkin juga nggak akan disupport. Cuman kita lihat aja gitu. Tapi sebenarnya kalau kita mau pakai sekarang, kita bisa pakai gitu. Karena seperti yang tadi saya bilang, kita bisa pakai yang extend tadi. Jadi yang extend itu bisa dipakai dengan performance problem. Walaupun sebenarnya tidak semua aplikasi kan Twitter ya, tidak semua aplikasi butuh performance yang gila gitu. Yang penting kan bagaimana kode kita itu bisa dikembangkan dengan baik dan mudah gitu. Jadi memang lihat aja plus minusnya. Kalau memang ini kayaknya bagus buat program yang kita sedang kembangkan, kita bisa pakai. Kemudian saya juga banyak dengar di internet bahwa Scala katanya yang cocok banget sama DCI, tapi karena saya bukan programmer Scala, nggak tahu, mungkin kalau di sini ada yang programmer Scala bisa share juga kenapa kira-kira seperti itu. Yang jelas kalau kita mau memanfaatkan DCI, sebuah aplikasi itu harus bisa melakukan extend di runtime dan melakukan unextend di runtime supaya memorinya nggak habis gitu. Dan rest nggak bisa itu. Ini referensi, nanti saya share aja ya di meetup, di halaman meetupnya. Terima kasih.
Oke, about DCI. Oke, sambil next speaker ya. Langsung. Tommy? Okay, so
Question.
yeah. Question for Gio even. Okay, so Tommy, you're from KMK ya?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
I work at KMK with these lovely gentlemen over here.
So you're some kind of like the team developer or what?
Did I say again?
You're the team developer or the senior IT or what?
I'm a developer, as are the rest of the guys. Are also developers.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm a developer. I was working in San Francisco with Pivotal Labs doing
The labs. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
as was Mohan doing
Okay, hello.
doing a lot of like Ruby on Rails and stuff there.
Okay.
And then we were working in Singapore at Pivotal Labs there, and now I was
You're moving here.
and now I am at KMK. Yeah.
Okay. And you both guys from Pivotal Labs too, or?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And so you're now working on the liputan6.com or anything else?
We're working on the Baru version of liputan6.com.
Okay, good luck. Okay, so Tommy, tell me about what you're gonna bring tonight.
Yeah, so I'm just talking about some integrations, and I have some slides to help you with that.
Okay, still not coming up. Ta-da! Not yet. Okay, got it. Okay, so Tommy, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody give it up for Tommy.
Right, okay, here we go. No, it's okay, I think I'm on.
Fine.
Right, so it's about integrating Rails, you know, one of the integration sign. Stuff. So, Rails is easy to describe as an MVC, but you know, like the more you're working, like maybe 5 years ago, like this was it, this was all Rails was. But we know that like lots of things have been added to Rails. You know, there's like, you also have your helper classes and you have your assets, which has a whole asset pipeline. And then before, like when your requests are coming in, you also have like your whole rack stack. So, you know, there are like 20 different, like just straight out of the box, there are like 15 different rack applications. And each one of those could have thugs, all these various things. Fortunately, we have testing for a lot of these things. So like our models, we have, this is sort of like what I use for testing, maybe not what you use. But for like my models, I use RSpec and shoulda. For helpers, it's just plain RSpec, a lot of RSpec. And, but for JavaScript, I use like JSLint, Jasmine, and then maybe like Evergreen sort of ties it in there. And so for views, then you've got something like Capybara that's sort of parsing the HTML and you're making assertions and stuff like that. And I just want to talk about sort of like a typical flow in the process and some of my flow that I think has been useful. So like, you know, maybe I'm making a new application that's like my LOLs app. I like LOLs a lot. And so I scaffold something up, the jokes have a setup and then they have a punchline. And everything's great. And then I want to TDD this thing, right? So I'm like, this is my new you know, test that I'm adding. So what I want to do is I want to add a funny to my LOLs, because a lot of my LOLs are actually like really lame. So I add this like funny boolean, and my index, I want my index instead to like assign top LOLs, because there are like bad LOLs and good LOLs. And I want my top, just to have top LOLs, which includes this hilarious LOL up there. Lord knows what the joke is. There are jokes to come. And so I write the test, I run the migration, and then I use the code to make it pass, right? So I've got my top LOLs in the index, and everything is green, and I'm ready to go. Except when I hit the page, it unrolls out, right? Because my controller is working fine, but from here, which, you know, this scaffold is looking for a whole bunch of LOLs, the plural of LOLs, and I've changed that to top LOLs, and this controller get request works fine, but you know, like Rails by default doesn't render the views when it does its controller test. So like this dot here of like everything's happy to me is like false confidence and sadness that awaits. So because when you hit the page, you know, you're in trouble. And I read a stat somewhere that probably 48% of production bugs come from like contract connections, people not talking right. And I prefer to make those to touch. And I prefer for the controller to touch the view and to make sure that passes, even at the sacrifice of like a little bit of speed. And then the question is like, so you can off the bat, then you can add to RSpec all of your config, render all views in all situations, right? And then that same test will show this error. And so you're a bit happier. You now have proper errors. When views aren't being rendered properly, when views have errors, your tests have errors, which is good.
So that's gonna automatically render the views, yeah?
Yes.
Using that? Oh.
Yes. So this means that, yeah, all of your views, it will not stub out the view, essentially, in the test. And like this alone, unless you have a really slow test suite, you should be doing this. Because it's just like much more secure as an application. You're much less likely to have a massive bug in production. And you could say like, oh, but then it's going to be really slow. And I've worked on slow test suites. Like I've worked on a suite that was like 3 hours, right? And so like this was like a moderate application. This is just the controllers of like 160 examples in those, you know, obviously many assertions, many, this is basically 160 different like, I don't know, types of controller requests. I don't have it for example. But the speed doesn't explode. It doesn't go nuts, but sure, there is a speed increase. And what you could do to potentially improve that is make like a shared example to move that render views out. So so maybe you have a whole bunch of it blocks, you have a whole bunch of tests and stuff like that, but at least one of them renders the views. Like if you're afraid of, you know, your whole test suite slowing down, you could pull out this shared example, like it should behave like a successful request. Who has used shared examples? Anyone?
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about shared examples, right?
Okay.
So this test right here, which hopefully everyone can see, I can blow up a bit. Blow up too much. Don't want to. Okay, well, you can still roughly see. So this example, I defined the request as a get index. I let these two jokes, so I essentially create these two, I do a let bang, so that like persists to the database. Now when we're here, there are already two jokes there. One is hilarious and one is stupid. And then it uses, so you might not be a fan of this style, but this uses an implicit subject right here. So it assigns all the funny jokes to top lols, right? This test right here says that the request, which turns the controller, the request gets the index, and then we return the controller as the subject. So this is essentially saying the controller should assign top lols with hilarious, right? So we're looking at this attribute on this object, right? And so that test runs and that's happy, but so far that was the same problem we had before, where it was erroring out and the view wasn't running, right? But what we can do is you can define these shared behaviors, and you can put these in like spec support. You can put these in spec lib or something like that. Another common example for a shared behavior would be like requires login or something. And then in the shared example, you could log out and then make a request for the path, right? So in this shared example, I say a shared example for a successful request. And it should behave like a successful request. So it's kind of like just copying and pasting this in here, right?
Including it.
Yeah. And so right here I have a context of while rendering views, and I define the same subject. We could get less tricky about subjects. Some people aren't fans. But I render views in this context. And then I just say it should be success. So it just hits the page, doesn't make any assertions other than the response is 200. So So that alone, like, makes, you know, gives you a real sense of security, or a greater sense of security that like all of your examples actually do what you want. And then you can get your Lollapalooza. If anyone is fast enough to read this joke, it's a good one. Save it for later. And
Are you just slowing down so we can
yeah, essentially slowing down so people can read the joke.
I'm not sure nostalgia.
Yeah, it's not a very, it's not an appropriate joke.
Yeah, just go on.
But you know, this is like, you know, that's just controller test, it's integration test. You know, there's a lot more to integration testing. Some people are a big fan of Cucumber. I'm actually not a fan of Cucumber at all, and here's why. So I'm not a fan of Cucumber. So let's say we're starting with Cucumber. We're going to do, well, this is actually RSpec style, but the problem I will describe happens with Cucumber as well. And so here we start with, we've added Capybara, we've added database cleaner, we have a spec that it just hits this /root in our test, and it should have Lollapalooza. This would catch our last bug. And in this code, I had an unexpected failure just when I was starting this project up, right? I was just doing this example for this talk, right? And I had done all the scaffolds that you see until now. I had done the things up until this point, and then I went to run my acceptance tests, and they would fail. Like Rails S would pass, but my acceptance test would fail, and I was like scratching my head, and it bothered me for like a half an hour. And it turned out that I didn't have Haml in my gem file, but I did have Haml installed in my system. So Rails S was loading the thing from the system, but when you start up your test server, when you start up RSpec that then starts up Capybara, that that which is forked does not have access to the Haml gem in the system, which was just a bit of a surprise in that process. Anywho, but say that took you a week to debug, and then you get some relative test, and this is what your Capybara looks like, right? You visit this page of / your page should have Lollapalooza. You like click a new lol, you type in the new lol. The new lol is what the fish say when it ran into the wall. Yeah? Yeah, anyone? And the punchline is damn. Yeah? I love that one. And then your robot, he checks funny, because funny is true. One of you laughed. We have asserted that it is funny. And then we create the lol. And I set it as an instance variable. Then I go back to, I go to the path of the show, click back, and you know, I see the punchline and stuff. And that's all good. But at the same time, like, we have, so say I have another one, you know, that fills in this form again, in this string here of setup. You need to know about the setup string and stuff. And it's like, it's already looking like spaghetti code, to me. I don't know about you guys. But so, like, what we could do is we can add a little object orientation to this. OOP style. And so what we could do is we could refactor that to potentially this lols page. We could make that as like a form that has, you know, a page, it has a path, and this fill-in thing is only in one place, right? So we have this little object that represents the page. And what we can do with that is create a much tidier DSL of how to interact with this. Not only is it like smaller, it reads a little bit better. Like I know that the like fill in with, that's a little low level for me. It's a bit easier just like new lol page, like with the setup of this, with the punchline. That is funny, you know. You can sort of create a bit higher level, and it's much more reusable. So if you have a test suite that runs for 3 hours and everyone's doing fill in this thing with that, when you change the button or you change the checkbox, it's like you have to grep through tons of code to fix this thing. And this is a much better solution. Oh, so that was cool. This is like, let's say we're like a year ago, that was cool. But now someone has come along and done something much better, which is called SitePrism. And it's just like, it's an awesome DSL for creating these sort of pages of your site that you want to test through Capybara. And it, I would have an example to run right now, but I would have an example to run, but essentially you don't have to say fill in with, you don't have to say any of that, but you can create these objects that just reference a selector, and you have great freedom to reuse bits, right? So for example, I think I have, so like here is a, here, oh don't do that. One second. These things, they're so confusing. Computers. Think. Okay, my whole doc's bored now. But oh, I think it's on this screen. And no, it's not on this screen. Wait, give me a second. I'm gonna like stop this 2 different displays. That's always horrible. I should always see what you see. Gather Windows arrangement here. There we go. And you see me and I see you. And right. So what happens a lot in these projects is, say that you have a web app like this one, which is mine, and you have this section of something that's iterated over and over again, right? And another section of things that are iterated over again, and you have a common nav across all these things. And like this should be one SitePrism section, and this should be another one, and then this should be another one. And you can easily interact with it in the same way of like page.nav.signin button, click. Page.projects.first, click. And you should really check out the SitePrism because it's a much nicer way to establish your integration test. It's also really well tied in with like Capybara WebKit. Its timeouts and all those things work. So we were just working on a project recently that used SitePrism, Capybara WebKit, like tests that went across 30 or 40 pages, clicking, dancing around, stuff like that, took like less than a minute, which is insane compared to Selenium, which like Selenium fires up the browser, like thinks about reading Reddit, and then like who knows what it does. So it's just way faster. I do have a few more things, just like points to talk about and ask questions to the group about, which is the first 2 things we have used in our testing here at KMK. Punji. Oh,
Already okay. It's
okay.
table 9.
Yeah. So Punji's using Integrity Web Spider. So he is, whenever we deploy and stuff, he runs a spider on our site to check and see whether there are any broken links in production and stuff. And that's something that could be very easily automated into your integration test. Recently, the Poltergeist gem has come out, which is really good for fast testing. And what you could do with that is you can actually check if there are JavaScript errors on the page. So not only has your page run, not only has you're clicking shit on the page, but are there any JavaScript errors, right? So Selenium, you cannot do that with Selenium. You do not have access to the JavaScript console. And then my last question to the group is, anyone doing automated performance testing?
Not yet. The project's still not that far.
Yeah? This is the end of like, I don't have any, it's just like conversation now.
Okay.
So, does anyone have any questions?
Because we have to clean the database every time a scenario is run.
So it hits your database?
Yeah, it hits my database.
Okay.
Because I want to test through it.
Okay.
So that's why I want to test the database, and then I want to clean the database every time a scenario is run.
right? So that sounds actually very much like integration testing.
Yeah.
So you have like a route dedicated to pulling up some test JavaScript as well in this process.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
So like you have a URL that like you hit and it fires off a whole bunch of requests and
Yes.
it clicks a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one thing that what you could do is you could tie that into, so there's like this gem database cleaner,
Yeah.
and you like in those tests, what you could do is you could hit, so database cleaner works outside of a transaction. It can. So your JavaScript could, start the test. It could hit a route that says, hey, database cleaner, start. And then it could do a whole bunch of shit, adding things, creating users, stuff like that. And then it could hit another route in the teardown that would then, roll back to where you are.
That's actually a very great idea.
Yeah, that would work pretty well.
If you don't mind me interrupting again. So I'm keen to know, so how many of y'all have, do Rails? Just put up your hands. Okay, all of y'all, just keep your hands up, right? Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. How many of y'all do, for all those of y'all who are doing Rails, those who don't do any testing at all, put your hands down. No, zero testing. So everybody does some form of testing here. Okay, so how many, for all of y'all who don't do integration testing, put your hands down. Yeah, so everybody else is doing integration testing. The rest of y'all just do like unit and more.
Yeah, using static pages,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So I typically start like my workflow. So like Lulzapalooza is like a joke app, right? But this other one, this was like an actual app that I used for a while, and I started it with the integration tests, and I started it. So I guess I have the code here, right? And I've got to change so that you can see like what's a good color? Neon. Is that visible? Yeah. So so like describing the pages is super simple, and then the features to set this thing up are like perfect. It's really, in terms of like the number of lines and the benefit that you get from this, of just like, viewing the dashboard, right? So where am I? User projects, coworker, user project size, coworker project size. So this like login as user, dashboard, load the dashboard. Dashboard should be displayed. The dashboard recent project size should be like all of the project size. Like this thing, once you're pretty comfortable with it, like writing these tests is super simple, super easy. All of these components are reusable for your scenarios, and like Selenium was crap and kind of slow, and some people are forced to still use it, but like Capybara WebKit and Poltergeist and those things are insanely fast. So the integration testing is certainly getting better and more usable.
I wouldn't say Selenium is crap.
So it's actually, and it's not Selenium's fault. It's mostly the like, I think it's the interaction with the framework and Selenium. Typically, because like a lot of times you're gonna like wait for something, or a lot of times something's loading on the page, or there's some transition and stuff, and that causes a lot of headache for people when they're using Selenium. But like what this Site Prism has is it has a lot of really good like should be displayed, and has a lot of like really good automatic checking if things are loaded and checking if AJAX requests are done. So it's not waiting longer than necessary. So it's much faster in the process.
Why don't people do more integration testing? Is it the speed, or y'all just didn't know about it?
No, the test features on Rails, maybe chips of it, but in some cases, just like when I work on, the application is as simple as you have 5 code,
Yeah.
and then you build the report, that's it.
Yeah.
So I basically with functional test, unit test, and that's it. I already cover all the tests,
Yeah.
something like that.
Sure. But I guess this is where what Giovanni was talking about earlier is important, is that the integration test or the acceptance test essentially become your documentation for your business process.
Yes.
And if you don't have it, there's no real, well, effectively you're losing out that benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then by the time sometimes I try to work, okay, try to make a good test, and then suddenly my boss said, "Is it done? What's your definition of done? I mean, can I run it? Yes. Okay. This year, here you go. This year, next one. Okay.
Yeah.
So we cannot do it a lot here, you know, because I'm waiting a lot.
Most of the end user of my company is not what can I say, IT savvy, not tech savvy. So they still, when you click this and it's working, it means that it works. So it's done. You don't have to test it.
I think for me, the big thing is like, so this was a project that I didn't start as like a testing project or anything, but like I have added like wacky features here and there, and like to be able to hit one button and like know that I didn't break something in a different corner of the app is like really relieving, and it makes you faster at adding features. Because you know you can add one push button 30 seconds, you know your whole site works. So it's a blanket of comfort and warmth.
It doesn't better.
Yeah.
Okay, we can continue the discussion, but we're gonna still end up the second talk here,
Yeah.
Tommy. Thank you very much. Give it up for Tommy.